just actually getting off work. Just on my way riding, on my way to riding back home. It's 5:46 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just had a weird thought, or I like to play around with just theories and stuff like that. And one of the weird thoughts or theories I had was, um, at least sometimes, is it possible that when we close our physical eyes in this physical dimension in our physical body, is it like opening? Because when you close your eyes, everything kind of goes dark, and there's just like darkness. And the reason why I just had this idea for this thought was because every now and then I will close my eyes and my brain will still be awake and my body will still be awake in the physical space that I'm in. But I will start to see another reality behind my eyelids, and it's not necessarily what they call hypnagogic imagery, basically like closed eye visuals. But I mean, I guess you could possibly say that. But what I consider to be closed eye visuals is basically like patterns and faces and things like that, which again, it can be similar. It could possibly be considered closed eye visuals too. But sometimes I'll just see a completely different scene, like an entirely different scene, like a different area in like a different scene, like a whole, like, okay, so just imagine you close your eyes and you kind of just keep them closed. And the more you kind of focus, the more a completely different layer of reality kind of comes into focus. And the longer you hold that, I just saw a blue ghost Halloween decoration as I was riding by it just now. Anyway, the longer you hold that state, the more focused that reality starts to appear. It's almost like you ever like had like a image or something out of focus. Well, it's kind of like that. And this happened to me the other night or the other day. I was my body was falling asleep, but it wasn't asleep yet. I was completely aware of the physical space around me, and I was completely awake. But my body was trying to fall asleep, but I was completely awake. I was completely aware of, I was laying in the bed, and, I was aware that I was, aware. I was aware that I was aware, and I was completely conscious. It was just my body, my brain was starting to fall into that, I guess, brainwave state of when you're about to fall asleep. But again, I was completely awake and aware of my physical surroundings and everything. So, and I can prove this to you because I was literally almost kind of going back and forth between, kind of perceiving the room around me and then going back into this kind of alternate state of perception. And I can do it at will. That's how I know I was awake. So whenever I would close my eyes, I would start to see a scene from, I guess you can call it another layer of reality. It's almost like basically seeing a dream before you're completely enveloped in the dream. So basically closing your eyes, and instead of seeing blackness, you see a whole other window of a reality. Imagine like the blackness is everything, and then like a small pinhole of reality starts to kind of open up out of the blackness, and it slowly starts to get bigger until it becomes, an entire world that you're basically fully um inside of, instead of just looking into it from a void. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, when you close your eyes, it's just blackness, it's just darkness. But then all of a sudden, there's this, faint, small perception or hole of light that starts to kind of almost open up. And then, again, it's kind of blurry at first, but then like the more you kind of focus and kind of hold that state, it kind of starts to get bigger or become more into focus. And, suddenly like this, image in out of the blackness in your head starts to become a whole reality that you're inside of. Like, that's basically what it kind of appeared to me as when I, experienced that and seeing that, and so when it happened and when it happens, now I'm kind of getting into this thing where I'll kind of like play with it and see, okay, like, what is this scene that's materializing in front of, my perception? And when I see it, I'll kind of open my eyes, and then I'll kind of see if I can close my eyes and see if I can make it happen again. And I did it like 3 times in a row or more. And I was like, man, this is really something. I'm like, this is literally like, because when I opened up my eyes, it was a completely different scene than the physical world around me. So I'm like, this is definitely another reality, because I'm able to kind of go back and forth between, seeing, these different scenes. I'm like, this is clearly a completely different scene than where I'm at right now. And the fact that I can go back into it at will is, to me, was pretty astounding. So I kind of feel like when we close our eyes here, it's almost like going back into, nothingness almost, now I know that when you close your eyes right now, obviously you don't go back into that state, but I think it's your brain has to be at a certain frequency or state to tap into this perception. And normally it's like when your body is really tired, or you're really tired, and like you fall asleep like really fast. But again, I was not asleep. I was completely awake, but I was really tired though. But I was not asleep because I kept waking up and doing it on purpose, and I could control it, It's just weird in between state of being awake and your body trying to fall asleep very quickly. It's like you're asleep, but you're not asleep. But I wasn't asleep though. I know it sounds kind of contradicting, but again, I was awake. Like, I was completely aware of my body, and I know I was awake because I could easily come into and out of that state and send myself back into that state. And every time I was there, I was like, let me hold this state for a second and focus and see if I can make this faint, blurry scene of this other layer of reality come through. And my eyes were completely closed and it was dark. And the more I kind of just, stayed in that state, the scene of a completely different window of reality started to kind of come into focus more and kind of get bigger. And it kind of started to, materialize more. And it seemed like the longer you kind of focus and allow it to, you know, I guess, materialize or come into focus, the more that world seemed like it was kind of pulling me into it. So again, I wanted to talk about that just really briefly. And I'm just curious if anybody else had any kind of experiences like that. I have them every now and then. But when I have them, the same thing happens in the exact same way. I'm like, I'll be awake, but my eyes will be closed. And at first it kind of confused me. I was just like, well, wait a second here. Why? How am I still seeing when my eyes are? Because in my mind is completely awake, and my mind is like, I can feel my physical eyes are closed, and a lot of times the room that I'm in is completely dark, but I'm seeing a completely different scene from somewhere else. But I'm like, first of all, like, where am I at? And how am I able to see with my eyes closed and with the room that is completely dark? It's the weirdest thing. Like when you realize that your physical eyelids are closed, but you're still seeing things. When it happens, you'll know, because you'll be awake, and you can literally feel your eyes close, and you'll be like, wait, hold on. And then sometimes you'll get confused, but you'll be like, no, my eyes are definitely closed. Like, what am I seeing? How am I seeing still? That's basically what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk some more about these kind of things, soon. I just wanted to briefly talk about that experience and how it just is making me realize more and more how, I feel like we kind of dial into, or we can kind of look into other realities, like, windows, and like, we can kind of, the more I'm realizing more and more that dreams are actually just other realities. There are other dimensions, other realities, other realms, but they're all a part of the same eternal, infinite dream. Because what that shows me is, our perception mechanism, our brain, our consciousness, it's the thing that brings the world. It's like a VR set, basically, right? And depending on your brainwave state or frequency, it's almost like it can change the channel or the broadcasting system to basically open up other holes or windows of reality into our current space-time experience, and it's basically like opening up a window on a computer, and then kind of, pulling it over one window, and then kind of dragging it out the way, and then opening up another window where something else completely different is going on. It's basically like that. But the computer, or the operating system, is able to perceive all these different windows of reality. It's basically like that. It's almost exactly like that, and then you can exit out of that window and then go back to your main screen, which is your present life. But then sometimes you can, bring up like 10 different windows and then kind of stack them onto each other, like dimensions or, universes or realities, and basically just kind of just go back and forth through the layers of those windows or realities, and kind of just go into those different windows whenever you want to, and see what's going on in that window, and then exit out, and then, open up another one and look into that reality or that window. And they're all flat, but while they're flat, they're also three-dimensional from the perception of the window itself. So within that window, within the experience of that window or that world in that window appears to be, three-dimensional. But outside of that window, Um, they just look like, flat windows of reality where, you kind of just looking into them and then looking out of them like, wait, I'm in this reality. How am I looking into this other reality? I'm here. How am I able to look into this other world or this other space and time? Because they're all stacked on one another in a two-dimensional way or concept, or you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm not going to get into it right now because I have to, I'm about to go to sleep and, you know, go to bed. But I just want to briefly talk about that. And I will definitely be talking about it more in the near future. So anyways, y'all take it easy. Have a good night or morning, wherever you're at. And until next time, later.